Justin has some Philadelphia Quakers on his top 10 Philadelphia Flyers of all time. I guess Philadelphia hockey players. Welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, and on today's show, the top 10 Philadelphia Flyers as we continue our top 10 series. If you want to go and check out all the other teams that we've done, we have done well over half the teams now. So, go check those out. Just hit the subscribe button, go back to the old episodes. And the beautiful thing is that those episodes, you don't have to, nothing that's happening in the season right now is going to affect those episodes. So they're there anytime you're bored and you're like, I want to listen to something that isn't the same exact talking head talking about what happened last night in this game. Like, you can go back and you can listen to those, and we had a lot of fun doing them. So we hope you enjoy them. But the Philadelphia Flyers is on the docket for today. And, as we do always, we're going to run through our just missed list. This is a team with there's a lot of good players that have played for the Flyers. They've won a couple Stanley Cups, been to some Stanley Cup finals. Justin, who just missed your list?
Oh, my just missed is a guy who recently, this past week, became the fastest Carolina Hurricane coach to 50 wins. Rod Brind'Amour, tip of the cap to you, sir. I've also got Reggie Leach and Jakub Voracek.
I used to have a dog named Reggie.
Did you? I know, I remember Reggie. Good dog.
It was a good dog.
Anyways, those are the three guys that made my just miss list.
Okay, yeah, they all also missed my list, but they weren't even on my just missed, although they could have been. I have Mark Recchi on my just missed list.
Wow.
Which he may be on your list.
He just might.
He's ninth all time in scoring, 627 points. He also is up there in points per game, and he's sixth all time in points per game. So definitely a really nice player for the Flyers, a guy who, in my thought for having him not on my list, and we can get to him more when we actually talk about him on your list. My thought was just that he was there at weird times. Like, he's there from 92 to 95. And he had his two best seasons of his career, 123 and 107 points. He had one other 100-point season with the Penguins before that. And then he leaves, and he comes back in 98 until 2004. So he missed the 97 when the Flyers went to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Could have used him.
He did have a couple really nice playoffs for the Flyers. He had an 18 points in 18 games and 10 points in 13 games. But I guess never really did anything massive. A couple conference finals or one conference final, and that's it. And did not make the playoffs in the first 3 years that he was there with the Flyers. So that was some of my reasoning. So his two best seasons with the Flyers didn't make the playoffs. My other two guys, Eric Desjardins missed my list. In reality, I have one defenseman on my list. So that one defenseman is a Hall of Fame defenseman. So he misses my list. And then Chris Pronger and Peter Forsberg. Couldn't put him in there, but
I thought about
two
Forsberg
of the greats
for a minute,
to play for them. But Chris Pronger's career ended as a Flyer after, who was it? It was a guy in the Leafs. I believe it was Mikhail Grabovski high-sticked Pronger and gave him a concussion. And that ended his career. Don't laugh.
Way to
it's
go.
Not funny, you
I'm
dick.
Sorry, you know what? Screw this shit. I'm leaving.
Okay, so you're number 10.
Number 10, Brian Propp.
Hey,
for me.
that's
number
me too. I got him
3
at number 10.
in all-time scoring. He was there for the good years. I mean,
he was in the 80s when they went to the Stanley Cup Finals.
Yeah.
He was the one year he had nice playoffs, actually. A really nice playoff record. 148 points in 160 games in total. But for the Flyers, he went in 87, 28 points in 26 games.
Yeah, he never won the Stanley Cup, though.
Didn't win the Cup, but was on some really nice
Which
teams.
is why he was a little bit further down on my list, I think. But, just wasn't there for the glory years, 80s. Again,
fourth all-time in points per game.
Yeah, he was great production-wise, and he consistently put up 40 goals every single season for like 5 straight years. I mean, he was up there, but
also second all time in goals. So
yeah, but just I didn't, again, not having really watched him play that much and not knowing too much about him. He's not one of those guys where, like, if you say his name, people are really going to know who he is.
Yeah, he was probably like the highest scoring player on a team in the 80s that, like, they were good, but they were overshadowed by a lot of other players and a lot of other teams that were Well, of course, you think Mario Lemieux is playing for the Penguins in the same division. So
yeah, if you go to any random Philly fan and you ask them to name off, your favorite Flyers, he will probably never make that list.
Yes, unless you're born in like 1977, and so you're like 9 years old when he's ripping it up.
That's
and he's
true.
all you remember, then you might. So he's on number 10 on both our lists. Who's your number 9?
Number 9 for me, John LeClair.
Okay, I've got him at number 8.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah, so definitely same idea there. John LeClair, 5th all time in goals for the Flyers, but scoring goals when goals were hard to come by.
That's very true. Yeah, that '90s era. I mean, he, growing up, he was one of those guys on the Flyers where I remember just watching him, and he embodied what I thought of the Flyers. Right, really tough to play against. Bullies, he was just mean and nasty, but yet there was something so sweet about him that I really liked.
And I mean, he was a part of that Lindros, the Legion of Doom line.
He was.
It was Michael Renberg, Eric Lindros, and John LeClair. The fact that I said Michael Renberg first. Gosh. Usually the guy, he's like the Steve Ruchin of that Solani Korea Ruchin line. Like,
right.
Who cares about Ruchin? John LeClair was just unbelievable. Like, probably because you had Eric Lindros and John LeClair. They were like the two best power forwards in the NHL playing on the same freaking line.
3 straight 50-goal seasons. Like, who does that anymore?
Yeah, the guy
and again, in an era where goal scoring's not big.
Yeah, and 8th all-time in goals. And, I think he's 4th all-time power play goals. Just through the roof. I actually have Tim Kerr at number 9. So Tim Kerr, all-time power play goal leader, 3rd all-time in goals. He's 7th all-time in points. And he was on that team also in the 80s. And from what I had been reading about him, that he was kind of the guy who was scoring the goals for this team. Like, he was the sniper of this Philadelphia Flyers team with, Brian Props feeding him the puck, and he's the one scoring. He had 2 54-goal seasons and 2 58-goal seasons, and then 1 48-goal season. So almost 5 50-goal seasons for this Flyers team. He got hurt in one of the years in between, only played 8 games. So, but yeah, just a great goal scorer. And Tim Kerr.
Okay, fair enough. I basically have him flip-flopped with LeClair and Kerr.
Okay, so you have Kerr at an 8.
I do,
okay.
Yeah.
And let's go 7-6. Who's your 7-6?
All right, 7 for me is Ron Hextall.
Okay.
Yeah, a guy who, again, when you think of...
Is he... He's one of 2 goalies on this list.
That's very true. Okay. Yes. If I leave the other one off, I mean, you can just cut the show right now and I'll go home. But
see a list.
I mean, first goalie to score a goal himself, though, right? Not banked off another player or accidentally put in the net.
Yes, that was the first goal. The first goalie to score. Billy Smith, I think, was it?
Okay.
Because he touched the puck
last
and like had given it to a player, and then they scored in their own empty net.
Right.
On
bunch
accident.
of dum-dums.
That's no.
Just it's people trying to make stupid passes, and it just goes all the way back down. But yeah, so he put it in the net. I mean, this is a guy who was just as nasty as any Flyer forward or defenseman at the time, too, for a goaltender. I mean, he racked up some freaking penalty minutes. And actually, I'm pretty sure he's number 1 in terms of penalty minutes.
476 penalty minutes in 489 games. So almost a penalty minute per game as a goalie.
Right.
We were just talking, the highest goalie last year had 14 penalty minutes all year.
Yeah, that was nothing for him, and he of course all-time win leader.
27 assists.
Yeah,
that's a lot of points.
He could handle the puck.
Yeah.
So I mean, he was your Mike Smith of the era back then, right? He could do it all, and it doesn't hurt that he leads the franchise in wins.
Mike Smith, the Ron Hextall of our era.
There you go, even better.
Most wins in Flyers history, 240. Of course, does have a weird save. It was 895 save percentage, but that's because he played in the 80s, and
that era was all messed up. Look at Grant Fuhr's.
Right.
Stats if you want to talk about goaltenders.
Yeah, it's hard to compare the two eras, and the equipment was so different, and but I have Ron Hextall at 6. I actually have Claude Giroux at 7.
Interesting. Claude Giroux's my number 6.
Okay, all right, we're just flip-flopping everybody.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of current Philadelphia Flyers and what he's been able to do up to this point. I mean, he's essentially I think the coolest part about him is that he's reinvented himself as a winger. Like he went from really, I mean, think 2000. When did the Flyers beat the Penguins in the playoffs? Remember that year?
11.
It was 2011.
Yeah, when they lost to Chicago.
And people were talking about like this Flyers team is like Claude Giroux might be the best player in the world, is what people were talking like
right.
that.
And it was basically where you had Crosby and Giroux going at it every game.
Yep.
Like they were fighting almost every game. It was fantastic. I loved it.
So yeah, I mean, fourth all time in points. My guess is that when all is said and done, he'll probably be second. You know, he'll pass up Brian Propp and Bill Barber. So Bill Barber's 121 points ahead of him. My assumption is that sometime over the next 3 or 4 years, probably 2 years, maybe he ends up with 120 points. I think that's pretty reasonable.
That's fair to say.
In the next 2 years, he should be second all time in points. Definitely doesn't have the goals to his name. 10th all time in goals. Only 287 goals per game, but definitely he's your prototypical a setup man as opposed to a sniper. He's always sent the puck over to Jacob Voracek. So,
yep, we'll see how that works out for him this year.
There you go. Okay, we're into the top 5, and let's hear your 5.
All right, number 5 for me is probably one of the most underrated D-men of all time, Mark Howe.
Dude, I have him at number 5.
Do you really?
Yeah.
I swear we haven't looked at these lists. People.
Yeah, we haven't. We have not compared lists. Yeah, Mark Howe, Hall of Fame defenseman. He is I believe the highest scoring defenseman for the Flyers. He have 480 points and the most goals at 138. So he really leads all categories for this team. But just a solid all around defenseman. I mean, he was there for their Stanley Cup runs in the 80s. Yeah.
He was rock solid. He didn't win any cups with the Flyers though.
No.
But I mean you look at the legacy he has to fill, right? You come into the league as a defenseman and you're who your dad is. He actually lived up to the hype pretty dang well, I thought. He handled the pressure. He played very, very good on the back end. You knew what you were getting every night. To me, he almost kind of seemed like a
Well, he was almost like I would say I'd say that he's like a Drew Doughty. Like he's not
fair.
super great offensively. He's not putting up like who the Eric Carlson of the time would have been like a Paul Coffey or
Well, I mean Mark Howe though 0.8 points per game.
It's true. It's true. But he did play in the 80s.
That is
so
true.
There's a lot of goals going in and he still had 138 goals, which is nothing to bat an eye at in terms of defensemen for goals. But yeah, I think Mark Howe is the best defenseman to ever play for the Philadelphia Flyers. And
all right,
there you go.
Number 4
is Bill Barber for me.
Dude, samesies.
Second all time in points for the Flyers, and he won 2 Stanley Cups with this team in the 70s. Was 75 and 76, or was it 74 and 75? One of those two.
Cups? 74 and 75.
74. Yeah, there you go. He actually has the most goals all time for the Flyers with 420, and second most points at 883. So
yeah, was part of that amazing Canada Cup team in 76.
Yes, that too.
So there's a nice little notch in your belt.
He nothing to. Yeah, he has to be in the top 5 for the Flyers. He also had a very good playoff in 79-80 at 21 points in 19 games. Always a performer in the playoffs too. So you look at a great career for Bill Barber. Just missed the top 3.
Okay,
because the top 3 are definitely
they're big names.
They need to be in there. I saw a list. Who's your number 3?
Bernie Perrant.
Okay,
yeah.
So I have Lindros, Perrant, Clark as my 3-2-1.
Okay.
So I'm assuming you have Perrant, Lindros, Clark.
That is true. Yes.
Clark, easy number 1. Like it's
best
not
smile
even,
the game's ever seen.
Yes, and it's not even close. Like 1,210 points, and he played over 1,100 games for the Flyers.
Yes, over a point per game at that kind of production in that era, early in the 70s,
and almost 1,500 penalty minutes. So he was
dude was everything that embodied a Flyer.
And the guy had freaking diabetes in the 70s.
Ooh.
Like type 1 diabetes in the 70s wasn't like, it's not like, now where you guys have like a little pager. Like my brother has diabetes, he's got a little pager and it just does everything for him. Then you're doing shots during the game, like pretty crazy stuff. What he had to do, but yeah, I mean Bobby Clark definitely the best Flyer all time. I don't think there's any question. No list that I saw. Actually, I did see a list where they had Bernie Perrant number 1.
Okay, I mean he did get both Conn Smites.
Right.
So you think about that.
Right.
And yeah, for a franchise that's only won 2 cups and he's got both of the smites, I mean, hey.
Yeah, I mean, also the fact that he played a lot of games. I mean, Ron Hextall played in more games than Bernie Parent, but Bernie Parent played more minutes. And Bernie Parent, Bernie Parent, just phenomenal. 50 shutouts in 486 games.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm assuming that something happened to him, that he didn't end up playing more games than that. But
yeah, I don't know. I mean, and as far as putting Lindros right above him, though,
he also played on the Bruins.
That's true, he didn't he? And the Leafs.
Yeah, for a minute. He actually went to the WHA and played for the Philadelphia Blazers before going to the Flyers and winning the Cup.
Yeah, what a career then. If you, yeah, for me though, Lindros, I put him right above Perron just because, again, he doesn't have the hardware, but this guy was so freaking good. And you talk about that line we talked about earlier with John LeClaire, he was just a monster, and that 1.35 points per game was just crazy good in an era where nobody was scoring goals. I mean, he could have been like that next big thing when you talk about the Messiers and the Gretzkys, right? Except for the concussions.
Lindros did win the Hart.
Oh, that's right. He did.
He won the Hart in '95 during that lockout year, which in that lockout year, he had 70 points in 46 games.
So freaking good.
So crazy.
And he really didn't have much around him, too, which is just crazy. I think he carried that team a lot of nights. I mean, yeah, Philly had some really good
I would
pieces,
just say this about Lindros is that at one point he was the best player in the NHL.
Absolutely.
And that makes you like you had your best season as the best player in the NHL on this team. You have to be in the top 3. I saw someone who took him off the list because they didn't like the way that he left the Flyers.
What?
So I said, give me a break. They're like, we don't like Eric Lindros anymore because his dad.
Shut up.
That's stupid.
Shut up.
Stupid.
Like, I could understand maybe if you put him at, I don't know, maybe I could make an argument for 4 or something like that, but because he wasn't there for a super long period of time. I mean, he played under 500 games. So you think of guys who have a little bit more longevity with the team, sure, maybe you could make that argument, but dude, his time there.
He still played 8 games with them, or 8 seasons with them.
I know.
8 games. He still played 8 seasons. Yeah, I mean, I know that some of those seasons were shortened seasons because of injury, but I mean, Eric Lindros is probably, if he had been healthy, we'd be talking about him I think in terms of like, who was better, Sidney Crosby or Eric Lindros? Like, he was that good. He was that dominant.
He was.
And I think that he gets forgotten because he did have, he was kind of a tool at times.
He was a little bit.
Think like the way he entered the NHL, he went, oh, I'm not going to play for the Quebec Nordiques. I don't want to play. Imagine if he had just stayed with the Quebec Nordiques.
And gone to Colorado.
Well, granted, Forsberg wouldn't have been in Colorado. So
that's true.
So there is that. But, I mean, the fact that he could have played with Joe Sakic and Matt Sundin. That team, at one point, the Quebec Nordiques had Joe Sakic, Matt Sundin, and Eric Lindros.
It's like today's Ottawa Senators. You had Hoffman, Stone, Carlson, Shabbat at one point, and you got rid of all of them.
And they blew it.
Like, what the flip?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Ottawa's not going to win a cup. Colorado.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Did you just compare Mike Hoffman to Matt Sundin?
Not at all. No, not at all.
I feel like you did.
No,
I kind of feel like
no. Let's move on. Move past it. Bobby Clark, number 1.
Yeah,
greatest Flyer all time.
Yes. You know, there was one guy, I didn't talk about him in my Just Miss, and he, you know, as I kind of rounded out my list, I'll say there's one guy that I thought very hard about putting on this list who I think could maybe find his way onto this list if let's say the Flyers have a nice turnaround and they end up being pretty darn good here and he moves up this list. Jakub Voracek's 15th all time in scoring. If let's say he has, we'll assume Jakub Voracek plays for the Flyers for another 3 years. Let's say he puts up 60 points per year. All of a sudden, you find Jakub Voracek probably 5th all time in scoring for the Flyers. And suddenly, does he make this list over some guys?
That's possible.
You know?
Yeah. I think maybe in another 5 to 10 years, too, we could talk about Carter Hart's name, too.
That's possible.
So, just got to get some hardware.
You're higher on him than I am.
I am a little bit.
I mean, yeah. there's lots of guys that we could. I mean, some guy from this era will, that's 20 years old, that's playing on the Flyers, like a Provorov or Konechny, or maybe one of those guys becomes the superstar. But I feel like with this team's history, you almost have to go to the finals or do something pretty significant in the playoffs, because that definitely has played a factor into my list.
Who the frick I forgot on my list? Michael Lehtinen. Why didn't I freaking put him on my list?
I mean, he should have been in here.
Took him to the Stanley Cup final.
That's right. All him.
Although, because he let that softy goal in from Patrick Kane, does he deserve to not be on anybody's list anymore for all time because of that?
Ouch.
Anyways.
Well, that's our list. Let us know what you think at OT Hockey Talk. This was a quick one, really, because we just agreed on everything accidentally. So the next team that we're going to do is...
Oh, you're looking at me.
I'm looking at you.
Let's go Western Conference.
Yes, we should go Western Conference. Absolutely. What about... We haven't done the Edmonton Oilers yet.
We have not, and that would be an interesting list.
Let's do the Edmonton Oilers next.
Okay.
That'll be our team next.
Done and done.
All right, let us know what you think of our list at OT Hockey Talk, and you can let us know preemptively who should be on this Oilers list. Obviously, Wayne Gretzky's at the top, or is Connor McDavid at the top? Oh, it's crazy.
Just shut up. Move on.
Okay, we'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.